Hello, hello, dear channel. Hello, dear channel. How are you? Welcome. So today we are here with Blender 3.5. We are going to talk about. We are going to talk about the new feature that everybody was expecting: the vector displacement brushes. So what you need to know is that you need to download. Actually, let's go to check that this version of Blender. So you just actually, no, I'm going to post them in a comment right now. Let's see if I can. Let me go to the stream right now. That's right here. Great. So here. So let's copy this one right here. So I guess a lot of people, too many people, are underestimating what the feature is. Let me open the test file, because these brushes are entirely 3D brushes. They're not just alpha brushes, and I know that many people are underestimating what's happening in Blender right now with the VDM brushes, the sculpt brushes, because this is done with a brush. And actually, let's go to sculpt mode. And that's what I'm going to show today, is how to create your own brushes from inside Blender, using Blender. You don't need ZBrush, you don't need 3D Code or whatever other software to create your own VDM map. So what you're seeing here on the right side with all these colors, that's the brush. And click. I think because it's okay, there it is. Was a bit slow for this one. It's a lot faster. Well, there's already a lot of geometry. Okay, so the brush is just a brush. It's a brush. It's a vector displacement map. So that creates an entire 3D surface in your sculpting brushes. So people should be very aware that Blender is now capable to create its own brushes. So I'm going to show where to go, what to do, what to download. It's not very complicated, but I've seen all the other videos about the VDM, especially from Blender Secrets, by example. It's a very famous Blender channel, and the person making the channel knows a lot about Blender. But the video sadly doesn't explain completely. And I'm going to do it live today because it's more also like a chat. And it's very interesting to be talking about this and to show all my followers that we can now create these brushes in Blender. And obviously I will be using, well, and you should start learning and you should start training as soon as possible, because now we can use Blender and Blender only. Like I said, you don't need to use ZBrush to create your vector displacement map, because Blender has the training files, and I'm going to show where to go, what to download, and what to do to create this brush. Hello. Oui, bonjour Benjamin. Alors nous y voici, nous y voilà. Quelques années plus tard, nous sommes là avec les vecteurs Bonjour Benjamin. Bonjour Benjamin. Et oui. Alors, ben, euh, nous aurons été patients, mais c'est effectivement possible et effectivement, je vais montrer comment on va faire. Donc, so the download links. Okay, so we need to go to the Blender org archive to download the patch. So let's copy the patch. Let's open your favorite browser, any browser. Okay, and we go there, and we need to get the 7.1. What's the number? Okay, 7080. Let's see if it's still here. That's higher, I think. 7080. Okay, so it's right here. This version, I don't know about the other patches, okay, because they're testing functionalities inside the patches. So the one that we know is this one, the D17080. Okay, so you'll download it, and it's a fully functional version of Blender. So it means that once you downloaded the file, you'll have it in your downloads. Like here, this is what you get. This is the zip file. Okay, so you open the zip file, obviously, and here we are. And you just copy your folder to your program folder there, Blender Foundation, and this is the version. Okay, so obviously you need to run this Blender exe file. Okay, you run this one, and this is what, well, actually let's do it. So let's say this, and I'm going to show them. So that's the version of Blender that you need. So I have it here on my desktop. So let's open it, and you get your 3.5 and this version, this patch of Blender. So what difference are you going to have? Well, basically almost nothing. Only when you go to sculpt mode. Actually, let's go on sculpt mode on the cube. Let's go to sculpt mode. So you have all the brushes. Everything looks exactly the same. So obviously at the beginning, you're going to be, what is this? I mean, isn't it like a fantastic feature that should be very obvious that there's something new? But the only difference is that when you go to texture, down here, you can see vector displacement. So obviously to turn it on, you need then a vector displacement texture. And that's the only difference. This little checkbox there from vector displacement. But this function is why we're here. And that's great news because the only, well, other softwares, they do have that. Obviously, ZBrush has VDM brushes for years now, and it's a very powerful tool, and not only for sculpting people. And I'm going to explain why it's important for anybody, because you can create very complex geometry without much effort, really. All right, so this is the 3.5 with the vector displacement. But then you also have example scenes. So we open this, let's go to this website now. Okay, and let me just turn down if possible, because the software is telling me to lower my bitrate. Let's see if it's possible here. I think it is. All right. Maybe it's going to be faster now. All right. So let's go to the web again. So this is the patch. I already explained the 17080. This is the patch 3.5. And now the example files, because we need to learn what to do, how to create. So there are, for every new function in Blender, there's a special archive part on Blender.org. And that's so actually, first we need to be very thankful to the programmer, the author, and people who helped creating this function. Because like I said, don't underestimate this this function, right? It's way more important than you might expect. So what do you get? Here we have we have some explanations, but I'm not going to read the explanation. The only thing that you need to know is that the format, and this one is really important. You need to export the texture to an open AXR format. So we are going to use the AXR format. You can't use PNG, you can use JPEG, you can use GIF, you can't use bitmap, whatever. You need in open AXR, because it's the only format that keeps so many floating point information about the colors that we are going to get the entire depth needed for a vector displacement map, all right? Okay, but here we have two important things. Well, first is a test file, the VDM brush test blend. So click on this, we're going to download it. I'm going to download it. Let's download it again. Can I save it from here? Well, anyway, I already downloaded it. Okay, so this is the example file that shows the famous horn. You see this spiral, actually the example here, well, the one you're already seen in any social media about the VDM in Blender. And then we have the very important VDM baking setup. That one has a very specific material to bake, because yes, we need to bake the texture, okay? And we need to know what has to be done to bake properly and how to create geometry for a vector displacement map. Okay, so when you download these files, you basically are going to get, okay, so here I have my folder, and let me see. Okay, so this is the brush. Okay, original. Let's go with the brush testing. So let's open the test file. So here we are, and this file has the very famous horn, this horn, as a VDM brush. So now you can see it live, and this has been shown on many channels already, but this is the test file. So you can see that the vector displacement down here is turned on. It's an area plane. The stroke is anchored, and it's a constant fall-off. These are the basic settings for the brush. But then also we have the texture. So here's the texture. You can see that this is the image for the brush. And if we go, actually, let's remove it. So I removed the brush. So obviously it's just doing nothing now because I removed texture. Let's go to okay, texture. Let's go to texture and let's open the file. I'm going just to show you. So this is the AXR of the VDM horn that we are using now. You can save it apart if you want, and you can see that it's an AXR file. So when it's loaded, again, you can see that we're going to have some problems because you see I erased the image and I loaded it again, but the result is not the same anymore. So I'm going to explain what's happening and why it's happening. The basic problem is the color space. We're going to see that sometimes it works on XYZ, sometimes it works on sRGB, and sometimes it works better on linear. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to check what, well, actually I'm going to load the file again, and I'm going to check what color space that brush uses, because I need that information. Okay, so here, this one uses linear. Then the other problem that we are going to have sometimes is the alpha of the image. Okay, so obviously in the test file, it's very easy with the test brush, it works. But now we're going to see what happens when we want to create a brush and what problems we are going to have. So I'm already saying what problems we're going to have, and we're going to see that it's not always easy now, because obviously they are going to make the system better for the baking and making your own brushes. It's still in development, but the feature is already here. So it's like the geometry nodes, you know. Well, now the feature geometry nodes have evolved a lot from, well, it's almost 2 years now that they appeared in Blender. So obviously the nodes have changed, the names have changed and all. So obviously for the new VDM brush and baking the brush, it's going to change also. But for now, we need to go to the baking file. So let's open the baking file, baking setup. And I'm going to show here what we can do with this, because it works. Actually, it works. So that's why I decided to make this live stream. It works. So this is the example baking scene. So the material, because this is the material of this object, it's a vector combining and separation setup of nodes. So you can see that there's a vectorial displacement here, there's a multiplication, and then there's the addition and subtraction and separation of every layer, and then recombination, and it creates the material. So this is going to create the 3D depth and information that we are going to bake to this image texture right here from this geometry. Okay, so logically it sounds very easy, because that's the only documentation you have. If you go to any other video on YouTube or on Twitter or on Instagram about how to bake your own VDM brush, it's the only information you're going to have. And believe me, something is going to go wrong. We're going to see that, but it's fun, and that's how we're going to learn. So that's the image where we're going to bake it. So people who are not familiarized with baking is a very old function for textures to bring the 3D information of a shader into an image. So it's baking the information of a shader and the nodes of the shader and the geometry into one flat image. So the VDM baking setup, that's the file that you need to download. Let me go back to, okay, here. So this file, you need to download it, because that's the tool we have right now to create the VDM images or textures or brushes from inside Blender. So here we're inside Blender with this setup and the settings for the baking. So baking, it's in render properties, pretty much to the bottom of the options. And the bake is already correctly configured, because it must be an emission type, the emit option. And obviously you can also bake from the camera if you want, but basically and generally it's baked from the top view. Okay, it's not baked from the side, from the front, from the angle or whatever. You bake the image for the brush from the top view. Okay, then about the resolution and the sampling. In many videos, they're going to tell you to set the render preset to 1 sample. That is wrong. I don't know who came up with that idea. That's wrong. You need more samples. And actually, the setup scene has 16. And we're not going to change that with we're not going to use just one sample for the image. It might give the same result, but no, it's less information. We want a bit more information. Then also now we need to create, so let's go to the next step. Here it was just the explanation of the settings in the render properties for the baking setup. They're already properly configured. Now, in the notes here, people who know how to bake, you know that we need an image texture node that is not connected. That's very important, and that's the surprising part for somebody who has never baked anything in Blender or any other software. But here in Blender, you have the setup for the material that you want to bake. So like I said, this one is going to be baked as an emission bake type, emit right there, because there are many options, but the setup scene is already properly configured. So you can trust that emit is the option. But you need an image texture right here, totally disconnected, but this image node is going to receive the baking image. The result of the baking is going to be that image. So what we need to do here is new image. Okay, now in many videos, everybody is going to tell you to use 512 pixels. Now, the funny thing is that's also wrong. Indeed, the VDM brush doesn't need much resolution. You can use like maybe 128, 256, 512, but there's something I noticed right away when preparing the the tutorial. If you look at the example file, well, actually, let's load it in Blender. Let me just load an image just for the fun of it. Just open an image. And so this is the example image. Okay, what do you notice right here? And I did my research for hours at night because I had a lot of fun. Also, some frustration at the beginning because it was not working. And this feature, I wanted to work a lot. So we're now talking about the resolution of the VDM brush. So all the websites are saying, and let's check this out, even the documentation says to use 512 pixels or lower. Then you go to the example file, and what do you see? You see that the example file has 1024, which is double the recommended resolution. So what did I do, and what do I recommend? If the example file has 1024 pixels square, we also are going to create our image. So actually, let's go plus new image. So let's call it this, my VDM brush, my VDM brush live test. Okay, now here, there's something we're going to talk about later when things start to go wrong, because they are going to go wrong at some point, but that is going to work. Okay, troubles you might want to check sooner or later. The alpha, something you're going to see that the alpha is making issues with the VDM brush. And the other option that sometimes works or makes the file fail is the 32-byte float option for the OpenAXR image. So we are going to have problems, and that's all because of the alpha and the 32-bit float of the AXR file. But anyway, let's go like this. The alpha is turned on by default when creating a new image, so we're going to leave it on. The resolution, I already explained that the example VDM brush of the horn has 1024 per 1024 pixels, sorry. Okay, so we're going to make the same resolution. So, okay. So now I have my image right here. We need to to find a file, a place. So this brush is new, live test. Okay, so it will save the image right there, maybe. All right, so just create a new image. It's empty at the beginning. And well, let's say I want to bake this horn file. So let's remove this one. Actually, let's save. When you open the baking setup scene, I strongly recommend you to save as and create your own copy of the scene. So this is the baking scene live setup. Okay, you save it as another file. So here we are, and we're good to go. So to bake an object, doesn't matter the view, the setting of the bake here is going to bake above surface from the top view anyway. And basically you need to select the object that has this material turned on, and you need to bake. So you just bake, click, it's going to calculate the baking texture. Here it's done. But always beware, it's going to tell you that this image is saved internally. This is the result of the baking. Here. This is the resulting image. Now you need to save it. So let's save it right here. And it's going to open here your folders. So now, about the saving. So here also, you need to save as a file format of OpenAXR. Beware the OpenAXR. It's not the OpenAXR multi-layer. It is not. We need the OpenAXR here. Now, the settings are correct right away here. So the color is RGBA because yes, we want the alpha. The color depth is full float, which is 32 bytes for the AXR. And the color space is linear. Okay. So obviously, like I already explained, where are we going to have problems when creating our own brushes in Blender? Yes, you are going to have problems with the alpha. Yes, you are going to have problems with the half or full float. And yes, you are going to have problems with the color space. Because sometimes it's going to fail on all these matters. Anyway. So here I'm going to save my VDM brush live test as an AXR, save as image. All right, so this was a very simple example of baking using the scene provided by the programmer, okay, in the archive on blender.org from the developer of this patch. And this is what we are provided. So this is a very simple example of baking the image. So once we bake the image, now let's create a new scene. New general. Let's save this scene. Okay, so now here we are in a default scene in Blender. Actually, we can use the cube. So actually, what we need to do is add a lot of geometry to the cube, because as you know, this has only one face on each side. So we only have 6 faces for the default cube, obviously. So let's go to edit mode and let's subdivide. Okay, so that's for the resolution when using the brush. So let's go to sculpting. And here, well, this is just the normal drawing brush, the adding brush that is configured here. So what we need to do is create a new brush here, new. Actually, let's call it my VDM live example. Let's turn on, here I can turn on the vector displacement. It's grayed, but it's turned on. So let's turn it on. And now that I created my new texture, let's go and open the file that we just baked right now. So it's here. Okay, so here we can see my VDM brush live test.axr. So this is the file that I just baked right now. Let's open it. and that's the image loaded as a texture. It's a VDM. So problems we're going to have, the alpha premultiplication or straight, that's going to make problem. Then the half float might make problems, yes. Then also the alpha option here, yes, it can make problems. But anyway, let's see what happened. Okay, so for now, if I use the brush, this is what I get. It's like the image, like if it was an alpha brush as something flat. But anyway, now, let's make the stroke method anchored. Let's make the follow constant. This is not absolutely necessary. What's very important is that the mapping works only in area plane. That's explained in the documentation. So when you turn on the area plane, you can see that the vector displacement right here is turned on. The basic stroke method is anchored. It's not absolutely necessary. You can also use, by example, the dot stroke method works very well. It's amazing. And the follow constant also work with smooth or smoother. Just depend what we want. So now let's see what happens. Okay, it's anchored, and when I use it, we have something, yeah, that looks exactly like the image. Okay, you look at the image, and well, this is supposed to be the horn from the example. So what's failing here? Well, in fact, it's not failing. There's just that we need to tweak some settings to make it work as the expected example. So what I noticed right from the beginning, and what's making generally the problem, it's the strength, because there's a Z-scale proportion in the VDM brush that needs some type of strength. So let's start maybe, so the default is 0.5. Let's go at 1. Okay, so the result is not good yet, but something is changing. The only difference now is that the head right there is flat. Okay, so maybe let's go at 1.5. Okay, so it's a bit better. We have like 70% of the horn, but we can see that it's not so easy. And that's why I said, you know what, guys? Beloved and blessed channel, this is going to be a very good thing to do, because we can see that. So here we have a problem with the strength of the brush and the resolution of my cube. I don't have enough geometry at the base object. So obviously you can go and add a subdivision or a multi-resolution modifier. You can do that, or you can keep subdividing your model if it's a very simple model like this. Obviously, you need a faster computer, a more powerful computer, because you need a lot. You should know that you need a lot of base geometry to make the brush work. Okay, anyway, let's go here and let's keep testing. So the brush is working, but the head is flat, and that's not good. So let's keep working on the strength. Okay, so here, that's the strength is not the problem anymore. There's another problem somewhere else. So when it's not working properly, so let's start working. Let's remove the half float. Let's remove the alpha, and let's put, let's say, the color space to sRGB. Let's see if there's a difference. Okay, the resolution is a bit better. And also then the distance from the object. So let's test from here. Okay, let's go back to linear. Let's go back to half and alpha. No, not yet. A bit further, maybe. No, still flat. So we still have a problem with the colors and the alpha. Let's go to XYZ. Let's go to straight alpha. Let's remove these guys. Nope. Nope. We still have half of what we want. This is not fair. This is a VDM brush that is not delivering what we want. So that's going to happen way too often. And I would say that it's because the feature is just starting. But there is a problem. So I don't know if we should report. I might report on the problem because there's something that is not straightforward from the color space and the alpha to create the VDM brush from the example file. But anyway, let's go back to linear multiplied and alpha. So let's keep trying. Okay, let's maybe make the brush bigger. Okay, that's too strong. And that's not strong enough. So you can see that if the strength is not enough, you're not getting, and that's funny, the strength of the brush is relevant, and also the size of the brush is relevant. Okay, so the problem is from the baking of the file. So what I noticed is that we need to, let's go back to my actual test 5 live setup right there, and we're going to keep talking about the baking because, as you know, I was able to create my own brush. So this is the example file. I'm going to show my setup and the one that I made 2 days ago and how it worked. So it should be my skull. It should be this one, I guess. Okay, so let's open this one. So it's the same. If you're wondering, it's the same setup. Okay. The only difference is that I changed the color space. All right. It's not linear. On this one, it worked with the sRGB. And I'm going to explain what I did. So it's exactly the same example file, but I made a different geometry to make a test. And yes, I was able, after a couple of hours, after like 1 or 2 hours of testing, I was able to make this geometry work as a brush. So I'm going to show that I have two different things. The size of my object is different from the basic grid. The basic grid is 2 by 2, and I made an object of 4 by 4. So when you make an object of a different size to create a VDM brush, something needs to be changed. You need to change the centering because this add vector changes the center of the brush. Okay. But that's not the problem we have with the horn. The problem you have when exporting and baking a VDM brush from Blender is the color space and the alpha. Okay, so I'm going to show that this one works. And non, pour baker, ce qui fait le bake, c'est le matériau. C'est le matériel. Parce que ça fait les couches nécessaires pour l'information 3D est basée sur le matériau, le matériel, les matériaux, le matériel. Ok, donc on a besoin. Ce que tu peux faire, c'est tu peux importer le matériau, tu peux l'appender, tu mets un append map dans ton fichier et tu l'appliques à l'objet. Okay. So what we're going to do now is bake this. Et bon, merci merci pour le commentaire. C'est super de savoir que les gens sont bien intéressés. et justement, moi, je trouvais que c'était intéressant aussi quand je faisais les tests. All right. So now we're going to bake my geometry, and then actually we are going to create geometry to make it. So it works here. Let's select the object and let's bake. It's going to take, okay, bake right there. Let's make a save. And so like I said, the difference is that the color space is sRGB. I tested linear, sRGB, XY. Actually, I tested all the options for the color space. The three that I found working most of the time are XYZ and sRGB and then linear. The other sometimes maybe filmic sRGB work. Even non-color is, and that's funny because it gives color, but even non-color works in some occasions. All right, so we have this, and we're going to save as. So this is the, we can see this is the geometry with the material, and we can see the baked image. So it's very interesting because this is a VDM texture map, and it has an entire 3D information inside the colors. Okay, so let's save as, and this one is here. So OpenAXR, RGBA, full float, color space, sRGB. You must be very aware of the color space because, like I said, it's going to make problems. Okay, so this is the test. Today, live Saturday. So we know that's the file I'm doing now. So there's no confusion or doubt that it wasn't done from this file. Okay, so we are here. And now let's open a new file. New file, I won't save this one. Okay, so again, the cube, I'm going to subdivide a couple of times. Okay, right there. So that's my cube subdivided. Let's go to sculpt mode. Let's create a new texture, area plane, vector displacement. Let's go to texture. Let's open the file we just did right now, which is the today live Saturday test. Open image. Now we need the color space. First thing, beware, it's an sRGB, no how float, and here. Okay, so that's the file. Vector displacement, yes. Stroke, let's make it, actually let's make it, well, let's start anchored because that's the basic thing, and constant follow. So let's test the brush. Okay, so what's happening? The strength. When you have this issue at the beginning, you know that the strength, let's go maybe at 0.85. Okay, so here the brush is working because well, it's already working better. The only thing that we need is a bit of more geometry, okay? But though it worked, it's working, and that's when I say, yes, I can make a tutorial about that. Because you can see that the problem we had with the horn example is the color space. My example worked with the sRGB color space and not the linear. If I use the linear, let's go to linear here. Well, actually, it just happens to work, but this is my luck. Anyway, my sRGB, the entire exportation and baking was done with sRGB color space. Okay, and then something that you need to know, because nowhere in any tutorial as of now, they're going to explain you that the strength of the brush, this is just a strength issue. Actually, if I go at 0.1, well, we can't even see it almost. Let's go at 0.3. It's even flatter. And that's wrong because the very nice and important part of the feature, I'm going to explain a bit more of that now, is that this is way better than an alpha brush. And let me show you why. And that's why I made this example. Here, we have a full sphere. You can see that the geometry comes back on itself. The only brushes capable of doing that are the VDM brushes, all right? So this is not, it's clearly not an alpha brush. It's clearly a VDM brush. It's a 3D vector brush. And that's very important because we can have geometry under some other geometry. We can have something behind, something on top, and the 3D brush is going to work. Okay, so here what I'm going to show is that I'm going to make a better resolution. Let's say 2 more subdivisions, well, at least 1. So obviously it's going to be a bit slower, but it's not that slow. let's go back to sculpting mode. Okay, so I added some subdivision, and okay, the resolution is starting to be pretty nice, right? So the color space, like I said, you must test your own brush because it depends on the size of the brush also. But the color space is not always linear when baking and when exporting and when using the brush. Check the color space. So this one works on sRGB. Sometimes it's linear and sometimes it's XYZ, by example. Okay, now what I'm going to explain is that the size, so the strength, I already explained that the strength of the brush is totally relevant, and you need to find what strength works, because let's say I'm going to use 2. You can see that the brush is not pretty anymore. It's like, looks like bugging somehow, because the strength is too strong. If the strength is too low, your poor brush is going to look like a poor alpha brush, and that's bad. Because at this point, this is very sad because it's not working properly as a VDM brush. Now let's go at 0.85 because I tested the brush so many times that I know that for this brush, the optimal strength is 0.85. So that's something new from any other tutorial you can see about VDM brushes. The strength of the brush is absolutely relevant, and you need to know that. Then, the size of the texture file right here. If we look at my geometry, let's see if we can see it. No, I don't have the image here, but maybe here. Okay, if you look at the geometry, my example image is totally square and it has very pretty decorations on the side. Now, when I test the brush here on my cube, we are not getting the full brush. Some part of the brush is missing. Now, that's not with changing the radius, that's not changing with the strength. You need to change the texture size, and this one works at 1.5. I know it because I tested it. And this is fun. Oh, this is new. Okay, this is an accident, but this is fun. This is not supposed to work like this at 1.5. But anyway, this is making a very interesting VDM brush. But this is not what I wanted. So maybe it's let's go at 0.75. No, that's wrong. That's funny because it's repeating the brush. Okay, let me show you what's happening. Okay, so let's keep texture at 1. So at 1 it works, okay, but that's not what I want. What I need to change is that when you go to mapping, okay, here the mapping of the brush, and this is very funny because generally you want the repeat extension. It needs to be clipped, and it's clipped at 1. Okay, so now if I put the size, texture size at 1.5, I'm going to get my full brush. A round of applause, please. Blessed and beloved channel. It's actually, I'm very happy to be making this. Yes, it's a tutorial. These explanations about the new VDM feature, because I tested the feature because it's amazing, and we can see. Look at this. Woo! This is my VDM brush, and look at the resolution. Look at the details, and you can see that we have this is a real VDM brush. This is not an alpha brush. And by example, this decoration, I've created this decoration to decorate, by example, a ring. So what we're going to create a ring. So what we can change also now, so I explained the strength is very important. The color space is very important. The stroke type, here we can change it to dot. In all the example videos, they're using the anchor type. It's not necessary. What's necessary is that the texture is mapping on area plane. That is very relevant. It is. All right. The stroke can be different. The stroke can be dots, by example, and that's very cool because now I can just click And then I can change the radius. And that's how I did this example. Now I click, let's say here, and I have my full brush because I adapted the strength. Then I adapted also the size. And remember, what was failing is, well, not failing, but if you don't want the brush to repeat, you need the extension for the mapping to be clipped. It's clipped to the file, so you get the image, the VDM brush, just once, like that. Boom. So now what I can do, and that's amazing, the VDM brushes work with the mirrors. Check this out. In click and click. All right. So what I'm going to do is that I can make a full decorated cube like this. Now this is exactly what you have on my advertising image right there. Okay, this is how I made this geometry. Okay, so the dot type. So what we can do now, we can go to the sides. Okay, so here it's not on Y, it's on X and Z. And we can make a fully decorated cube. Okay, so also the distance. Okay, this is pretty nice. This is the other face. Let's go to the back face right there. And now, after some frustration, because yes, it's not, the only bad thing is that it's not that straightforward when exporting, when baking the VDM brush as for now. I hope they'll make it a bit better because there is an issue with the alpha and the color space. The only thing is that you need to play with the alpha and the color space until it works. Okay, so here we have all these faces. Now the front face, no, sorry, the side face. So here we need the mirror on X, Y, and not X, no, on Y and Z, sorry. Okay, and we have this is here. Now let's make the back, no, the front, it's done, the left side. Okay, the left side, right there, clicking there. Okay, here. And we need to make the lower side, so X and Y and not on Z. And let's just one click, properly placed, one click, here we are. Okay, this is fantastic as for now. So the sad part of all of that is that, by example, ZBrush had VDM brushes for years, all right? And that's a bit sad. But finally, we have true VDM brushes in Blender. So like I said, this is not a simple alpha brush. And every people out there, because look at this, I made this decorated cube in a couple of seconds. Obviously, first you need to create your VDM brush, but we're going to create one now. But look at this. Once the brush is working, you can create this amazing decorated cube in seconds because the mirrors, they work very nicely. The stroke type works very nicely. So I use the stroke method as dots, not anchored. It's not necessary. The only thing that's necessary for the VDM to work is the area plane because it maps on the area of the face that the VDM brush encounters. All right. So that's the only thing. Then the mapping is clipped, so the brush doesn't repeat. And this is what I get. So what I want to do now, actually, I'm going to save this file as Saturday Live. It's not Saturday Night Live, but it's Saturday Live. Cube and ring. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to save this scene. I'm going to create a ring. So let's hide this. Let's hide this cube. All right, so let's add mesh, circle mesh. Radius 9.1, vertices, let's go at 250. All right, so we're going to create a ring. Okay, front view, let's save. Edit mode, extrude, and scale this right there. Now select everything. Let's go this way, like -10. All right, let's put the geometry to origin right there. Okay, so let's call this ring. Now what we're going to do is we're going to test the brush on this object. And sorry, let's check also the face orientation. Yeah, thank you. Alt N. Outside the normals, they're properly oriented. Let's save. Let's go to scalp mode. All right, so my brush is already configured. Let's see what happens if I do the brush on this. Nothing. Why? Nothing. Nothing. But you know why? Because we have no geometry. We have no geometry on the sides. Okay, let's try the anchored method. Okay, we don't have enough geometry. All right, so let me create. Let's try. Okay, edit mode. Let's go to loop cut right there, and let's loop cut like many times. How many times? 90 times. Let's try this. So you need a specific type of geometry. If the geometry is not good enough, you won't have much resolution. Okay, so that's the resolution that I get for now. That's not good enough for a ring. Okay, we need more geometry. So let's add some beveling. And let's add, okay, so here we might have some problems with the subdivision. No, not at all. Let's go. Okay, what I could do also is a multi-resolution modifier, but let's go at, okay, let me apply this. Okay, so now I made 3 subdivisions. Let's check the resolution of the brush. All right, so here, also something. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's make the brush a bit smaller. Okay, and now let's try with the... Okay, it's pretty great. And let's try on the Z-axis also. I don't know if it fits. Does it fit? Okay, and I get some weird effect on the inside. That's not so much of an issue. So what I'm going to do now, and also I get some weird, okay. So by example, this brush with this setting won't work to create. No, actually it will. Let me show you how. Let's do, well, anyway, this is just an example. What I want to do now, and again, let's create, because it's a lot more fun for you and for the followers of the channel. Let's go to a new file, and I'm going to show, let's create a new brush. Let's create a new brush. All right, so we're in Blender 3.5, creating a new VDM brush. So how it's done, again, let's start from scratch, okay, and let's make it fun. So we're going to add a grid. Okay, the grid, it's better if it's 2 by 2. Okay, we're going to save the file as making my own VDM brush live. That's the name of the file. All right, so we need subdivisions at 100, maybe. No, let's go maybe at well, let's start at 25. Let's go to edit mode. Yeah, obviously that's not enough. But anyway, okay, here what we're going to do is add a modifier of multi-resolution. So let's go out of edit mode. Let's subdivide 4 or 5 times. Let's go 4 times. So for all the levels, we are going to stay at level 4. That's great. We should have enough geometry here. And what I want to do now is something. So I'm not going to do the same brush. We're going to create a new brush. So what can we do? Let's go to edit mode and let's try to create something. So obviously I'm just creating the brush now. It's not always easy to come up with a good idea live, but let's try something. Okay, I'm just going to select that and let's go up. Okay, so we're going to do that with the proportional editing, G and Z. Okay, so something that we need to beware is that the corners, the outside, you should never affect the outside. So I'm going to move up, but I'm going to make the circle so like I said, it's not so easy because that's not interesting. Let's do something different. What could we because you need to modify the grid. Then we're going to sculpt the grid, but we need to do okay, I have an idea. Let's start with the center here. Let's make a type of cross. How many you have? Okay, right. This. So, or let's try to make it symmetrical. Are we symmetrical? I think I forgot those. All right. Let's go. Salut. Alors, ok, 3 design. Moi, j'étais représentant 3 design au Mexique pendant plus de 10 ans. J'étais une école 3 design. Je suis un expert instructeur sur 3 design. Mais je ne travaille plus avec 3 design. Donc, je vous dirais, mais c'est quand même un des 3 meilleurs programmes de bijouterie au monde. Alors, les avantages sont très simples. Sur 3 design, vous avez la puissance des outils pour les bijoutiers, spécialisés pour les bijoutiers. Donc, la puissance des outils est indiscutable. Mais sur Blender, vous avez une énorme liberté. Alors, à long terme, voilà, moi j'utilise Blender parce que j'ai retrouvé ma liberté avec un outil qui est libre. Blender est libre. 3 design, vous allez toujours être codépendant de l'entreprise de 3 design qui est Gravotech et de la licence. Mais bon, évidemment, si vous avez accès à 3 design, il n'y a aucun doute, 3 design. Voilà. Bien. So, let's keep creating a VDM brush. Oh, okay, this is pretty interesting now. Let's try, and with the proportional editing, let's do something like this. Okay. Now, something very interesting from a VDM brush compared to an alpha brush. Ah, mais par exemple, rien que pour vous voyez, le problème de 3 design, c'est que la vitesse d'actualisation ou de progrès technique sur 3 design, des nouveaux outils, des nouvelles options est trop lente. Elle est trop lente. Sur Blender, l'avantage, c'est que l'évolution technologique, parce que justement, par exemple, la brush VDM sur 3 design, vous n'allez pas la voir. Puis elle n'est pas près d'apparaître. Hein. Bon, il y a d'autres techniques pour faire ça sur 3 design, mais Blender est beaucoup plus dynamique dans sa relation avec la communauté, en fait. La communauté, ça c'est quand même aussi important. Et c'est pour ça que moi, je m'amuse beaucoup plus comme... bon, moi, je fais des bijoux de très haute bijouterie sur Blender maintenant. Ça prend plus de travail sur Blender, mais l'intérêt même technologique ou intellectuel est beaucoup plus fort sur Blender. Mais bon, si vous voulez la puissance simple pour les bijoutiers, 3 design. Il n'y a pas de discussion. So, what's interesting with the VDM brush is that it's very nice when the volume comes back on itself. Okay? To make it very different when the geometry goes under some other geometry. That's why, like the horn, they've made as an example. Ouais, ça c'est vrai aussi. L'avantage de Blender, c'est que pour le rendu et les animations, la puissance de Cycles X et tout le système d'animation de Blender, on y gagne. Parce que moi, c'est ce que je faisais avant. J'utilisais 3Design pour modeler les bijoux parce que les outils pour les bijoutiers sont quand même beaucoup plus puissants sur 3Design. Mais après, je passais tous les objets à Blender pour faire les renders et les animations parce que Blender, pour ça, il est beaucoup plus puissant pour les textures, beaucoup plus rapide pour le rendu et pour faire les animations. Donc, au bout d'un moment, j'en ai eu marre d'utiliser un programme pour faire le modelage et puis un programme parce que la sculpture, j'ai aussi commencé à la faire directement sur Blender parce que Blender, pour la sculpture, il n'est pas encore aussi puissant que ZBrush, mais quand même, Blender pour faire de la sculpture, il est très puissant. Hein. Enfin, Blender, c'est vraiment puissant pour faire la sculpture. Hein. Moi, je fais des sculptures à bâton de voir. Chinese Lion, on va voir. Vidéo 2003. So, just an example. Ouais. Cette sculpture-là, le lion, ça c'est un lion chinois. Ça, c'était fait complètement sur Blender. Et puis d'ailleurs, j'ai une image qui a été publiée. Ça, c'est le résultat rendu 3D. La sculpture, elle a été faite entièrement sur Blender. Donc, voilà, moi, je fais déjà la sculpture sur Blender, même en faisant sur les modèles 3Design. Donc, mais bon, 3Design, c'est quand même un programme pour les bijoutiers. C'est un programme français. Et c'est quand même un des 3 meilleurs programmes pour les bijoutiers. Ça, c'est quelque chose qui ne changera pas. So, let's go back to what I was saying. The nice part of the VDM brushes is when the geometry comes back on itself, like something like this. So this is something that a VDM brush can do. En español, hola a todos. Bueno, hola a todos para la gente de toda mi comunidad de Latinoamérica o de España, incluso porque hay muchísima gente de España que me sigue. Entonces, el día de hoy estamos haciendo los pinceles VDM, que son los desplazamientos de vectores, que son los nuevos tipos de texturas de Blender que, bueno, viene de ZBrush, obviamente, pero ahora están en Blender después de algunos años que la gente estaba llorando, llorando y llorando. Y ya están acá. Entonces, estoy mostrando que las brushes de VDM no son mucho más evolucionadas que las alpha brushes, que son pinceles 2D que se utilizan en escultura, en ZBrush o en Blender. Hay muchos packs de alpha brushes que permiten hacer escamas, piel, lo que quieras, pero los nuevos brush, los VDM brush, son 3D. Es decir, que la geometría se puede regresar, es totalmente 3D, pues, es así de simple. Entonces ahorita estoy creando un nuevo VDM brush en vivo para mostrar cómo se hace en Blender. Porque sí, ya podemos crear un VDM brush, un pincel 3D desde Blender. Y funciona bien, ya funciona bien. Es bastante sencillo, es bastante rápido. Sí, oui, Hugo, oui, c'est vrai, un des problèmes de 3Design pour la plupart, et c'est le problème que moi j'ai eu avec mes étudiants, c'est que moi, comme école de bijouterie, je vendais le programme coûte en moyenne 5 000 $, en moyenne, hein, y a plus d'options, on peut aller jusqu'à 8 000 $, plus les formations. Évidemment, c'est un programme qui est vraiment beaucoup plus dirigé à l'industrie des bijoux, aux grandes entreprises de bijoux, parce que d'ailleurs, Pandora, Cartier, Swarovski sont les très fameuses et grandes entreprises qui utilisent 3Design. Et c'est un problème, effectivement, le coût. Alors moi, j'ai commencé à perdre des étudiants parce que c'était beaucoup trop cher faire des formations sur 3Design. Donc, moi, ce qui m'a sauvé, évidemment, qui m'a sauvé véritablement, c'est bon, il y a des années, ça faisait déjà 5 ans, je crois, que j'utilisais Blender, parce que on peut on peut investir l'argent dans des choses, dans d'autres choses que dans le programme, en fait. Donc, effectivement, le problème du très haut coût de 3Design, ça a toujours été un problème. Mais tristement, il faut aussi le savoir. Ouais, en plus, puis les formations officielles, elles sont nulles. Hein. Moi, je vous le dis tout de suite. Moi, j'ai plein de clients qui faisaient les formations avec moi. parce que bah, les formations officielles, elles sont très très moyennes. Hein. C'est très très moyen. Et c'est cher. Mais bon, ce qu'il y a, c'est l'image de marque. C'est ça aussi, c'est un peu ça le problème. C'est que les grosses entreprises font les journées de formation de façon très standard parce que ce qui compte, c'est pas vraiment le contenu de la formation, c'est les rencontres, c'est les journées d'entreprise, c'est les formations d'entreprise. Et puis, bah, si tu es un employé, c'est sympa pour toi. Je veux dire, c'est un peu 3 jours de vacances, quoi. Parce qu'il y a une petite verrée, des petits canapés, tout ça, quoi. C'est très bien. Mais côté formation technique, je trouve que c'est quand même un peu trop cher, pas vraiment très fort du côté des résultats. So let's come back to creating the VDM brush. So it's starting to be quite interesting. So let's continue developing this brush here. And okay, so now what I can do, and I'm going to go to sculpt mode. And let's turn on the XYZ mirrors, all right? And let's try to decorate this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the strength, I'm going to try 1.5. Okay, and let's make something pretty simple, but visually attractive. Okay, so maybe here. Okay, maybe there. That's too strong here. Okay, now let's try to make some decorations here. So I'm going to make the model, and then we're going to bake it and export the VDM brush so you can see the entire workflow actually in place in Blender 3.5. That is working. I was very glad to find that it's working, even if in fact we are not getting much information, because like I said, okay, this is starting to be pretty interesting. So I'm going to add geometry under. Okay, I have an idea. Okay, let's make the brush bigger. Let me add some geometry under these parts again, because that's the point of explaining also to the audience. Explaining that the geometry brushes are much more than alpha brushes. The thing is that too many people don't know. Okay, let me use a dot and let me use a constant fall off. Let's try this. Click. Okay, that's way too strong. Let's go at 0.75 maybe. Nope. Okay, let's make it. Okay, dots yes, but let's make the fall off. Let's try inverse square maybe. Okay, that's not pretty enough. So VDM brushes are entirely 3D brushes, and that's why the feature in Blender is so important by now. And I'm going to show. Okay, let's use maybe sphere. Okay, that's nice. Let's make sphere. Let's make a sphere right here. Right. Now let's make the inside like that. Let's make the same here. So I'm just designing live a VDM brush, and then we're going to use it. To create some design, and it works as a tutorial, so people can see how to create a VDM brush. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's go back at stroke space. I think it's the normal one. No, space, no, dots, drag dot. I don't even remember. I think it is. Okay, smooth, and let's try to decorate this more. Bon, l'avantage de Blender, oui, je conseille aussi Blender pour une raison simple. Enfin, Si vous n'êtes pas un sculpteur professionnel, ça dépend de l'industrie dans laquelle vous travaillez. Blender, par exemple, pour faire de la sculpture, pour de la bijouterie, a toute la puissance nécessaire et en fait, la simplicité nécessaire. Il y a des gens qui disent que Blender est difficile. C'est pas vrai. Blender est très généraliste. Blender permet de faire tout ce qu'on veut. Alors, si vous n'êtes pas un professionnel enfin, c'est-à-dire si vous ne faites pas des caractères pour des personnages pour des jeux vidéo ou par exemple des personnages pour le cinéma 3D, tout ça, vous n'avez pas besoin de ZBrush. Il est trop puissant en fait. Euh, mais ZBrush, et en plus, bah, ZBrush, bah, faut aussi payer quoi. Bon, franchement, il faut pas mettre tout du côté gratuit ou payant. Les bons outils coûtent cher. Il faut toujours savoir que les bons outils coûtent cher. Blender, euh, bah voilà, est un programme open source, donc il est pour toute la communauté et vous ne payez pas le programme. Mais quand même, il ne faut pas oublier que quand même Blender a besoin de soutien de la communauté. Il ne faut pas non plus l'oublier. Alors bon, évidemment, ça donne des avantages de... bah, du côté économique, quand même, et la liberté du côté de la licence. Et il y a plusieurs programmes hein, qui sont très connus. Par exemple, ici en bas, moi j'ai DaVinci là pour les vidéos. DaVinci, ben, la fonction, justement, DaVinci, par exemple, moi je fais juste l'édition de vidéo très simple. J'ai pas besoin de la version professionnelle de DaVinci. Donc pour la sculpture, c'est un peu la même chose. Hein. Je dirais que Blender est très bien pour, bah, par exemple, pour la bijouterie. Moi je trouve que Blender pour la bijouterie, c'est génial. Et c'est pour ça aussi que j'ai commencé à faire la chaîne. Bon, il y a quand même quelques années. Hein. Là, ça fait déjà un moment que je suis là. Et j'ai déjà démontré que Blender est très bien pour sculpter et pour la bijouterie. Sans aucun doute. Bien. Alright, so my brush. Okay, let's maybe add. What can I add? So it doesn't have to be full of things, just an example, but this can be pretty nice. After all, try to smooth this. Okay, so this is my geometry. I think I'm done on the designing side. This is a pretty interesting alpha brush. I don't know, alpha brush, whatever. VDM brush, because I'm just here with a VDM brush. All right, so this is the geometry I want to have as a VDM brush. All right, so obviously you can append the material. Actually, let's do that because the documentation says that we can append. So let's append the baking material. So let's append the material, the VDM baking material right there, and let's put it to our object right there, and let's make this view. Okay, so the shader, this is the view that I get for baking this VDM brush. So like I said earlier, we might have issues with the alpha, with the color space, and with the dimension. So if we go to the shader, we could have a problem with this vector positioning node because it doesn't work necessarily for any type of geometry. All right, so let's try to bake. So to bake, I need 16 samples. No denoising from what I know. Baking, it's going to be baked from the emit node type. Above surface, yes. Now, like I said, we need to create a new image. So this one's going to be called new brush, VDM brush, new brush, brush, no brush, 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 but no rush. Okay, I explained the resolution at the beginning. The documentation says 512 pixels. Actually, it works very fine at 1024. It's not that heavier, honestly. Don't worry about that. The alpha is turned on and the 32-bit float is not turned on. Okay, that's my image. So now let's bake. It's baking. It's baking. Okay, baking is done. So this is the resulting image. That should work. But like I said, and wait a second. Wait. Because exactly what did I not check? I don't know what color space I'm using here. Okay, so here the default color space is sRGB. Let's hope it works with the sRGB. Maybe it works, maybe it won't work. That's what I explained at the beginning. Okay, so this is the image. Let's save this image. Let's save as. So I'm going to save this. So very important. OpenAXR, RGBA, full float, new brush VDM here. Save as image. Okay, so this is my brush. Now I baked it. I saved the image as an OpenAXR, right? And let's create any type of geometry. Let's create a cube again. So I'm going to do it in the same file because I don't need to create a new file to test. Okay, so let's subdivide. Let's create a bunch of geometry there. So, you know, the better resolution you want, the more subdivisions you need for the VDM brush. Let's go to sculpting and let's configure, let's create a new texture. Area plane, turn on the vector displacement. Let's go to my image here. Let's open to the texture, and this is the VDM brush. Open image. Okay, so now let's check. The color space was exported as sRGB. So let's go at sRGB. The alpha generally should be pre-multiplied and it should work. Then, as you know, we need to check the strength, the texture size, and some details. The radius, the stroke type. Stroke type, let's go at anchored. For testing, anchored is nice, but like I said earlier, the dot works pretty well too. And the fall off, the normal one is constant. Okay, now let's try click. Okay, nothing happened here. Why? Here it is. Oh, it's working pretty well, but the strength is not enough. I need more strength. And okay, we still need more strength because I want the full 3D brush, and it's pretty nice. So what I'm going to and also the mapping. Okay, so let's remove the alpha, let's remove the half float, and also and the mapping, let's go at clip. Okay, here we are, and okay, this is great. Oui, le baking. Revenons au baking. Justement, là, ce que j'ai fait, donc j'ai créé la géométrie sur une grid. Et j'ai fait exactement, j'ai fait le fichier matériel. Tu vas file append. Tu vas ajouter justement de la scène d'exemple. Là, j'ai la scène d'exemple. Donc, la scène d'exemple, c'est celle que tu télécharges de la page de l'archive de Blender, qui est la page officielle de chaque outil. Donc, c'est le baking setup. Donc, tu downloads le baking setup. Tu vas le chercher. Donc là, j'ai l'original file. Là. Quand tu fais ajouter, il va te mettre tous les fichiers. Alors, tu veux le fichier, un fichier, c'est le matériel, justement, matériel. Et c'est le VDM Baking Material. OK? OK, voilà. Bah voilà. Alors, une fois que tu fais append à la géométrie, moi, à ma grid, tu vas au matériau, comme toujours, et tu ajoutes et tu lui mets le VDM Baking. Et après, bah, tu configures le baking sur emit, tu mets cell sample, et puis ce qui est important sur le bake. So what's important on the baking is that it's the emit type. Comme si c'était une lumière en fait, parce que l'information des niveaux 3D est sur la couche de l'émission de lumière en fait. C'est une façon ou d'une autre de décider sur quel niveau sont codées les informations 3D. Okay, so when the baking is done, you can now use it, and it's great because it's working. It's working, and this is really nice. So now I think the strength is a bit too much. This is what 135. Merci. Okay, like this, and it's pretty nice. So what I'm going to change also is the size. So I get the entire brush, my brush completely here, the full square. All right, and this is pretty nice. The only difference is that it changes the resolution. So I'm going to subdivide. Okay, so that's on the cube. So let's erase the cube because like I said, what I want to do is a ring using a VDM brush. Just to make an example, but to make a full example and to have fun because we're jewelers and what we need the VDM brush for and what I will be using the brushes. That's why I'm already here testing the VDM brushes in Blender and baking the brush in Blender, because many channels pretend that you need ZBrush to create your VDM brushes for Blender. It's not true at all. You can do it entirely inside Blender already. Just use the example files, download the example files, learn how to bake the brush, and there you go. It's really easy, in fact. Well, obviously, when you get such a nice tutorial from me explaining how it's done, it's even easier. So, okay, so now let's create a ring. So front view, I want to make this brush work on a ring. All right, so mesh, let's go to circle. Okay, let's go at 200 vertices, radius 9.1. And all right, so let's go to edit mode. Okay, do I have, okay. Extrude scale somewhere here. Let me just check the thickness of this. Add mesh cube. What thickness? Okay, thickness is, that could be a bit more. Okay, there you go. Extrude. Let's go at 8 millimeters, like there. Let's check the normal to the outside. All right. So this is my ring. And let's center the geometry. I just want to center the geometry because I am going to use the, okay, let's do a Control A Alt Transform so the rotations get applied and the scale also. Okay, now let's go and let's start making loop cuts. Yeah, we're going to make loop cuts here on the outside. Let's go at 3. And okay. Now let's add, so let's save, let's add a bevel, let's add some subdivision surfaces. So here now, let's go at level 3. Let's apply it at once. So when sculpting, because you don't want modifiers when sculpting, honestly, you need to know that. So let's go to sculpting and let's start testing the brush here. Okay, works nice here. The only thing that I don't like is that it affects the inside. But that's not an issue. What I'm going to do is make a copy of this one. This is, let's call it solid body. Solid body, let's hide it. And let's sculpt on the ring for sculpting right here. All right, so now let's go to sculpting. Let's turn on the mirrors. Let's go on stroke dot, I guess, should be good. And let's try all the symmetry. Okay, so the size, I want more. Okay, something like this. Is it strong enough? Okay, so I don't have enough resolution yet, so let's make more subdivisions, maybe 1 or 2 more. I think it's pretty fast. Yeah, it's still pretty fast. Let's go at level 2, so that's going to be level 5 of subdivision. Let's apply it. All right, and let's test. Okay, so it's applying. Is it? Yeah, it's applying the subdivision. I don't know why it's so slow suddenly. It's pretty fast earlier. Actually, when making, okay, it's applied now. What did I do? It's making a mesh. Okay, it's making a mess. Okay, let's save the file. Now let's go to sculpting. I don't know how many millions. Let's check how many millions we have there. I think I'm like at 8 or 10 millions on this ring. And yes, now it's a bit slow at saving, but there's not that much reason unless I have more than 10 millions. And that could be the reason. Let me see the statistics. Okay, I do have 18 millions. Okay, but that's not too slow. And actually, I said that Blender has become very good now at mesh speed. All right, anyway, let's go at sculpting. So I want a lot of resolution on my ring. I think it has, because it should have like 9 millions or 10. Okay, but now it's a bit low. The division was fast, so I'm okay. Whatever. Top view. Okay. So let's put the strength at 1.5 and let's decorate the ring. So this is a VDM brush. It's not just an alpha brush. So you should know that. Okay, I'm going to make it just a bit bigger. Just a bit stronger. So now I just need to place let's place the decorations on. Okay, what I could do now is that let's turn me off this one. Let's make the brush a lot bigger. Let's make one right there. Okay. Is that good? That's too strong. But you can see that the VDM brush is working pretty well there, because this geometry is under the other geometry. It's on the side. Okay. So what I need here is maybe not that strong. So let's erase that. And I'm going to decorate my ring using my new VDM brush. Just to complete something, then I make a very quick render of this ring. Okay, I want just a bit more strength, I guess, because I want to make it pretty well, a functional design. Let's say it's going to be a functional design. Okay, yeah, but you know what? Sadly, this was too strong too. All right, so let's go back at 215 and 0.9. And the mirror. So this is like the application. Now we put this into practice. So we learn how to create the brushes and we learn how to bake them. And it works. It works. It works in Blender. It works very well. And people should know, because in many fields, and by example in jewelry, for sculpting your details on your jewels, is going to be a very nice tool for feathers, for scales, for many things, or other type of decorations and that happens a lot. That happens a lot in jewelry. Okay, so that's why we are here. But anyway, my tutorial is important for many other people. You don't have to do jewelry, to make jewelry, to design jewelry, to be interested in the VDM brushes in Blender. Okay, that's pretty nice. So now we're going to put one right there, if it allows me, or I'm going to put well, that's too strong. Sadly, it's too strong and I'm too close. Let's make the brush a bit smaller. And we're now, so after creating my own VDM brush from inside of a blender, I'm using the brush to make a ring design, and it's working really well. And it's quite fun, honestly. It's just a bit slow here because I made like the mesh has 15 million faces, but here we are. Okay, this is very interesting. So now from here, I'm going to make some decorative borders. I'm going to seal. What I said earlier, it's not a problem if the brush is affecting the inside. I don't want the inside to be affected. So what I'm going to do, that's why I made a copy of the solid body. Okay, here. Now I'm going to decimate this mesh because it's way too heavy. So let's decimate this. Okay, we had 18 million faces. So we could see the soft blender is fast, even with 18 million faces. It was a bit slower, but it wasn't an issue. So let's go at a ratio of 0.5. So this decimation is going to be slow. This is going to take a couple of minutes. Oh, goodbye blender. So not even. It crashed. Well, but that's not a surprise. You can't decimate 18 millions. But I'm going to show you that well, it's not much of an issue, in fact. I don't need to decimate it. It was just to make it a bit faster. But anyway, so let's not decimate this. I don't have to. Then I can export the STL anyway. So, and actually, that's what we're going to do. So this STL file is going to be very, very heavy. Okay. But anyway, so let's make. Okay, so here I'm going to create. I can erase this. All right, so I'm going to make some decorations on the borders, and let me add some solid on the inside. 9.9.1 and 0. All right, then I'm going to complete the body here, -4. Extrude this on Y. Let's go at 8. Then A, and I'm going to make it solid. So let's extrude right there. So this is to make the body totally solid. Don't forget to check the normal to the outside. Oh, and funny thing is that this shouldn't be wider at all. Exactly the same there. We're good. Okay, we're good like this. So now let me create subdivisions for this. So bevel this. Let's make the subdivisions and let's keep testing. Well, let's completing the design. So this was done with VDM brushes, and it's a lot of fun, and it's working really well in Blender now. And it's just the early stages. It's just in a patch. We all hope it's going to come inside the official 3.5. I think 3.5 is in beta already. Okay, here, and we're going to add let's add some spheres. Okay, let's add some spheres on the side. Okay, geez, right there. Now, no 90 degrees. Okay, I want this to be like this. Right. Now, all transformations. Let's create an empty. I'm going to multiply this decoration right away. So shade smooth, add object, empty axis at 0. Ah, ah. Donc, je pense que le problème, c'est... Bon, bah merci pour... Ok, bon. Mais ça veut dire qu'on va arrêter là parce que le problème, c'est que la carte graphique a dû morfler. Bon, j'ai deux cartes graphiques, mais ce qu'il y a, c'est qu'il y a une des cartes graphiques qui a bloqué sur la transmission. Donc, je peux pas reprendre le stream. Donc, ce qui veut dire, bah voilà, euh, euh, c'est tout pour aujourd'hui. So, when Blender crashed a couple of minutes ago, the software OBS crashed also, I guess. Well, the live feed crashed, and well, too bad, too bad. But I think I explained enough for today. And thanks, Benjamin, for telling me that the stream stopped. So thanks to all of you for following my streams, following my channel, and all it was all about creating your own VDM brush using Blender 3.5 because yes, it works. I explained a couple of things that you won't find in any other tutorial, and it was a very pleasant stream. I hope you enjoyed it too, and this is all for today. Take care, be fine, and see you soon. Have a nice weekend. Thanks. Take care. Bye bye.